And finally, our international star, Mr. Kabir Bedi, we all knew as Sandokan when we were younger. He's done so much theatre abroad and in India, and of course films. So the topic loosely is cinema and theatre, whether they are parallel or opposing genres. But since Rithiman Da is here, I request him to guide the conversation, and he'll explain the format. We'll first have all the speakers share their views, and finally we'll take some questions from the audience. Thanks, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear, or will it help if we put the fan off? We'll suffer, but can you hear? Everybody? Okay. All right. Welcome, a very warm welcome, especially for sacrificing your lunchtime. And if you know Goa, you know what a huge big sacrifice that is, sacrificing your lunchtime. The topic we've been given is cinema and theatre, which of course we can sit in this lounge and keep discussing for the rest of the festival and not come to any conclusion. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to narrow it to cinema and theatre in India. And then in the course of the conversation, we might well extend to reference points internationally. Also, in order to give the discussion some focus, I'm going to be a little selfish. And I'm going to pose issues to our eminent participants, which have been intriguing me for the last, indeed, 4 decades or so, the time during which I've been associated with cinema and theatre in this country. Let me start with Kabir Bedi, and let me ask him, whenever we discuss anything Indian, whether it's Indian society, Indian politics, Indian culture, the question inevitably comes off, is there such a thing as Indian? You have seen our cinema outside, you've been a practitioner of theatre. To you, is there such a thing as Indian cinema? And if so, what is the essence or the binding force of Indian cinema?
Thanks, Rithiman. I am absolutely convinced there is an India and Indian cinema. Divided as we are by language, by the way we look, by the way our cuisines are different, by the way our clothes are different in many parts of India. Fact is, the idea and the essence of India still holds it together. And I think that reflects even in its cinema, which may be made in multiple languages without really reference to each other. But it is not an accident that what is unique about Indian cinema in the world, which is its use of song and dance as part of narrative, at least in popular cinema, has been adopted by all forms of cinema, all languages as well, as far as that popular cinema is concerned. When it comes to independent cinema, you're dealing there not so much with Bengali, Tamil, Telugu, Punjabi sensibilities. You're talking about the sensibilities of individual filmmakers. And independent filmmakers leave their own personal stamp on films, albeit with reflections of their culture. So yes, I think there is an idea of India that's very strong. There's an idea of Indian cinema that has an underlying cohesiveness. And I feel that it is also a cinema that's very unique in its own way, especially in the popular genre, through the use of song and dance. It is the only cinema in the world that gives an entire nation its popular music. There's no other cinema in the world that does that. And I feel that brand Bollywood, and in fact brand Indian cinema, has now become something that is widely respected abroad. And I feel that process is really accelerating. It was begun by our legendary,
who was here very briefly, was hurrying back to Poland to start his new theatre production in about a week's time. And you were also telling me about how you had the opportunity to see a Sam Mendes stage production recently. Now, what do you see in India as the crossovers between theatre and cinema? Do you think there are any crossovers? Do you think they exist in watertight compartments of their own? How do you think they can borrow from each other's experiences, skills, competencies?
Good afternoon. It's a very loaded question, sir, and I'll try to answer it to my best knowledge. My understanding of theatre and the knowledge and the study and the education of theatre has been in the United States. I studied and practiced theatre in New York. So initially I had no idea of what and how Indian theatre functions and who they are and why they are. But when I moved to Mumbai some 17 years ago, I realized that there is a very unique process of theatre in our country, the modern theatre I meant. Because in the West, Indian theatre is largely known for its dance drama, its traditional theatre, be it Kudiyattam or Kathakali or any of those traditional dance forms, art forms, theatre forms that you know. When it comes to the modern theatre, I had no idea what existed and what was happening in India until I came here and I became a part of a couple of theatre productions myself. And I realized that in terms of modern storytelling, there are lots of new visionaries. I would very seriously like to believe that we are telling new stories in theatre and in cinema today, at least for the last decade or two, which is happening. I have been fortunate enough to be a part of it. But at the same time, as we all know, theatre doesn't have enough funding or finance to really indulge and enjoy the experiments that we could do in theatre. You mentioned about Mr. Zanussi and Sam Mendes. I've seen his work in theatre as well. There are very few filmmakers I know in India who after making films would go back and do theatre. I know Rajat does it successfully somehow. I know Nasir Saab does theatre and films together. Paresh Bhai does it. And then there are very few. But it is very difficult because I think Indian cinema is somewhere else and Indian theatre is absolutely in another space altogether. It's not a complaint, it's just an observation. And I think they both, wherever they are attempting new stories, which in the last 5 to 7 years, I have to say, had been very wonderful, you know, for new actors like me to be about.